Now, I'm sure there's going to be some that disagree with this video, and that's okay, and it may stir up some controversy. Are you a dog owner that believes feeding your dog is such a difficult task that it's best left to the dog food companies? What if I told you that feeding your dog could be summed up in just 2 to 3 sentences? So if you're someone who is interested in feeding your dog a raw diet, but you are concerned that you don't have the knowledge or the expertise to do it, or to do it properly, you're in the right place. Because in today's video, I'm going to show you how by just following 2 to 3 sentences, you can easily feed a raw diet and give your dog the best chance at optimal lifelong health. The information that I'm giving you today comes from years of personal experience researching and also feeding my dogs a raw diet and my own personal opinions on the matter. Now, I'm sure there's going to be some that disagree with this video, and that's okay, and it may stir up some controversy. Welcome if you're new here, or welcome back. I'm Charlie, and I've owned Bernese Mountain Dogs for over a decade now. I love educating people about this amazing breed and giving you tips and tricks to make sure your dogs are happy and healthy for as long as possible. As always, before we begin, check the disclaimer in the video description and let's get into it. I started feeding my dogs a raw diet over a decade ago, and it started out of sheer frustration and desperation. When we first brought him home, our first Bernese Mountain Dog, Odin, had chronic diarrhea for 6 months straight. We tried everything the vets recommended to fix the issue. Regular stool samples and deworming, allergy panels and blood work, antibiotics, expensive prescription foods, pre and probiotics. We even took him to an internal medicinist in Philadelphia where they did a more extensive allergy panel and intestinal biopsies. But everything came back normal, and if he wasn't on antibiotics, he was pooping water. It wasn't until our dog trainer recommended that we try feeding a raw diet that everything changed. We didn't have anything to lose, so we took her advice and we witnessed our own personal miracle. Within 24 hours of switching Odin to raw food, and we did it cold turkey, by the way, the diarrhea completely cleared up. No antibiotics, no supplements. He was off of everything. We thought it might be a fluke, but we kept feeding it anyway, and the diarrhea never came back. Now, my husband and I weren't completely ignorant to animal care. We both grew up around agriculture and livestock, and I majored in animal science in college and even went to go to vet school. I thought I knew how to best feed my animals, but it turns out that I was so wrong. When we started feeding raw, we had literally no clue what we were doing. I mean, none. I read articles online, I got my hands on every book that I could find, and I started joining groups on social media on raw feeding. I started realizing that feeding dogs the way nature intended wasn't as hard as dog food companies and some veterinarians and staunch opponents of the diet make it out to be. So here's how to get started. It's actually a lot simpler than you think. So here's a short list of nutritious foods that are suitable for feeding dogs to produce maximum health, work, reproductive capacity, longevity, and optimal growth. And from this simple list of commonly available foods, you can devise a diet that will keep your dog healthy, active, fertile, and happy. But for the purpose of today's video, feed your dog a diet consisting of 60% of raw meaty bones. The biggest thing to remember when starting your dog on a raw food diet is this: the foundation of the diet must be raw meaty bones. Now, it's no coincidence that almost all the cartoons and memes that we see of dogs show them eating and loving bones. And most people grow up knowing that dogs absolutely love bones. Yet, despite this instinctive knowledge, most modern dog owners are not feeding their dogs bones. Most people think they're dangerous. Some also find them inconvenient, either because they think their dogs will fight over them, or they don't want them eating them in the house, or they don't like finding them in their garden as they're planting it every year. But let's think about it for a second. How did dogs develop? For tens of thousands of years, before commercial dog kibble was even dreamt of, dogs relied on bones as the most important part of their diet. The lack of them in the modern dog's diet is causing them to suffer serious health problems in all stages of life. Let's debunk some common myths about feeding bones so you can start to see how they're actually nature's perfect dog food. The myth that bones are dangerous. So the short answer to this is yes, bones are dangerous, but only when they are cooked. Dogs' digestive systems are not equipped to deal with cooked bones. Cooked bones are harder, they're more brittle, and they're more splintery than raw bones. Cooked bones are the ones that are most likely to get stuck in your dog's mouth, pierce their digestive system, set like concrete in the large intestine, or stick like fish hooks in the rectum. So please never ever feed your dog cooked bones. bones. But raw bones are completely different. So every single modern dog is capable of eating raw bones, no matter their age, breed, size. For millions of years, dogs have cleaned up carcasses of other animals. And if your dog still has some healthy teeth left, they should be eating raw bones. But why? Most people think of bones as pacifiers, something to keep your dog occupied for a few hours, right? More advanced dog owners know that raw bones actually keep dogs' teeth clean and bad breath at bay. But what most dog owners don't know is that raw bones are full of vital nutrients that your dog needs. So first up is minerals. Bones are comprised of living tissue, so living cells. And bones contain minerals which are embedded in protein. Bones also contain fat and fat-soluble vitamins. And the middle of the bone contains marrow, which is a highly nutritious mix of blood-forming elements including iron. And raw bones also provide antioxidants and anti-aging factors including enzymes. So raw bones actually contain all the minerals that your dog needs. That's right, they contain calcium and phosphorus in the perfect combination, and together with all the other minerals that are essential to your dog's normal function. Want to ensure your puppy has a complete supply of minerals that they need to avoid skeletal problems like hip and elbow dysplasia, arthritis, wobbler syndrome, bone cysts, splayed feet. Feed them raw, meaty bones. Many of these diseases and disorders are a direct result of poor nutrition. Next is protein. So the protein that's extracted from bones by steam in the commercial dog food process is actually called gelatin. And this is a very poor quality protein that is deficient in a number of essential amino acids that dogs need. But fresh bone is different. It contains all the essential amino acids that a dog needs with the exception of methionine. But fortunately, methionine is found in abundance in raw meat. So that's why you need to make sure that the bones that you're feeding your dog actually have raw meat on them. Next up is essential fatty acids. So essential fatty acids are critical for dogs' health. And raw bones contain fat and fat-soluble vitamins, which we'll talk about in just a second. So chicken and pork bones contain very high levels of essential fatty acids, while beef and lamb bones have fat, which is lower in these. But fat-soluble vitamins, including vitamins A, D, and E, are stored in the bone with fat. And this is another reason why dogs that eat raw meaty bones tend to be so healthy, because fat-soluble vitamins are actually associated with enhancing the immune system. So when bones are cooked, all these vitamins and minerals get cooked out with the fat. The next part of the bone that is so incredible is the bone marrow. So when your dog eats raw meaty bones, they're receiving many of the nutrients that help produce blood and a healthy, well-functioning immune system. This is because the bone marrow is where blood is formed, and it's also part of the animal's immune system. When your dog eats raw bone, they're actually consuming all of these blood-forming nutrients, including copper and iron. But again, cooked bones makes them lose all these high-value nutrients. There's also energy in bone because of how much fat and protein that it contains. So if your dog is very fat or obese, bones are still a necessary part of their diet and should be fed daily. However, it should be in limited amounts just because of the high energy content of raw meaty bones, and that we don't want to continue to promote obesity. Hopefully by now you're starting to see why dogs should have raw meaty bones as a regular part of a healthy diet. Let's talk about some other aspects of raw meaty bones that you may not have thought about. Well, first up being dental health. It's not hard to pick out the dogs that eat raw meaty bones. Our friends, family, and vets are always amazed at how clean our dogs' teeth are and how good their breath smells. Even as they age, they have very little to no tartar and plaque, nice healthy gums, and we've never had their teeth cleaned professionally and had to shell out a bunch of cash for it, and we don't buy those expensive teeth cleaning treats. But the biggest indicator is to test your dog's breath. I can guarantee you if they are eating raw meaty bones, it will not smell nearly as bad as it does without them. And bones are nature's toothbrush for dogs. So as a dog chews on them, they rip the flesh from them, they crush them, and that very action actually cleans the teeth, massages the gum, and stops tartar and plaque from building up. It can also prevent tooth decay, dental abscesses, and possibly a whole body infection caused by an infected mouth and bacteria in it. Left untreated, those type of mouth infections can actually spread through the bloodstream and may lodge in other organs such as the heart, lungs, and kidneys. And unfortunately, all of these dental diseases are extremely common in today's dogs because we don't feed them a diet that includes raw meaty bones. They're often fed commercial kibble or a soft, mushy convenience food that's it's very high in carbohydrates. So it's not a coincidence that the increase in mouth problems and teeth issues in dogs is parallel to the fact that they're consuming this commercially processed dog food in conjunction with the decline in feeding raw meaty bones. And bone eating should start with puppies as soon as they're able to eat solid food. And by the way, if you're getting any value from this video, please hit that like button and consider subscribing if you want more videos like this. And if you haven't already, sign up for my email newsletter. Every week, I share tips and tricks on how to feed your dog for optimal health, how to save money on dog food while also feeding them a quality diet, and also stories about the joys and struggles of pet parenthood. Simply click the link in the description below and I'll send you my essential dog digestion checklist for free just for signing up. So let's think about it. The rapid increase in dog dental problems over the last few decades has also seen the rise of a sector of veterinary medicine that honestly didn't exist a few decades ago, and that's doggy dentists. So in the early 90s in the US, veterinary dentistry was documented as providing vets with up to 1/3 of their gross income. And according to Dr. Ian Billinghurst, who is an Australian veterinarian and also author of the dog Give Your Dog a Bone, which I'll link in the description below if you want to read it. It's an amazing book. He said that doggy dentists didn't even really exist in Australia until the early 90s when American veterinarians came over and started trying to sell them expensive dental machines and dental equipment. So in the US, where dogs had started eating a very commercialized processed diet, these vets were making an absolute killing because all of these dogs started having dental issues that needed treated. So as part of the sales pitch, Dr. Billinghurst recalls how the American vets tried to sell him on the idea that dogs should not be eating raw bones ever. But over the next few decades, Dr. Billinghurst and other Australian vets started seeing the negative health effects of no longer feeding raw meaty bones, and luckily started recommending them to their clients again, which reversed the entire process. Meaty bones also provide incredible exercise for your dog. So one thing to remember is do not cut the meat from the bone and do not cut it up. Make sure you're feeding it in large lumps that are left on the bone. This gives your dog something to do with its jaws, its teeth, and in actuality, its entire body. Voila! Exercise. All of that exercise, including chewing, tearing, ripping, it all helps a growing dog develop properly, as well as helping to keep adult dogs fit. So think of a dog with both feet planted firmly on a lump of meat or a carcass that they're still eating. Head down, taking hold of that meat, ripping and tearing it away. So what on this dog is being exercised? Honestly, the whole body, the jaw, the neck, the shoulders, back, the hind legs, the front legs. If you deprive a dog of this exercise by not feeding them raw meaty bones, they never have the correct development of these muscles. So if you look at puppies, does your puppy have a long, thin skeleton that lacks muscle tone? It's probably because they've never been given a raw meaty bone to eat and the opportunity to eat as nature intended dogs to. Now let's talk about meaty bones and digestion. And this is something that I have personally seen amazing effects with, given that my Bernese Mountain Dogs do tend to, as a breed, suffer from chronic digestion issues. So in addition to exercise and kind of healthily stressing a dog's muscles and their skeleton, all that ripping and tearing also helps with the dog's digestion. And it can help prevent chronic issues such as diarrhea, constipation, bloat, and IBS. So the hard work of tearing meat from a bone actually sends a signal to the dog's digestion system that, hey, food is coming, it's on the way. And this gives the digestive system plenty of time to read those signals and prepare for the food, helping it to do an efficient job of digesting, absorbing, and retaining what's being eaten. Think about the difference between a dog eating a bone and your dog eating its commercially processed dog food. It's minced up, it's often soggy, mushy, and they basically inhale it in one gulp, right? I mean, and I know my dogs would when we fed it. 1 or 2 gulps and it's gone. No work required. The dog doesn't honestly even have to stand up to eat, right? And because of this, there's very little time for messages to be sent to the digestive system, which is then unprepared for the meal. So this massive mush slides past teeth that are covered in tartar and plaque, which have not had to actually chew anything for years, and it arrives in the stomach as this hard, leaden ball of concrete into an unprepared stomach. So what does that lead to? Poor digestion, indigestion and diarrhea are oftentimes the result. And a few hours later, because the food is so high in carbohydrates and the dog didn't have to work for it, it's not fulfilled. And so they get hungry again. And then that's just promoting obesity the same way it does in humans. But dogs that are fed raw meaty bones rarely suffer from digestive issues, including digestion, diarrhea, constipation, bloat. They also produce much smaller quantities of poop that smell so much better. Now, I'm not saying that any dog poop smells good, but I can attest firsthand that the dog's poop smells so much better when it's fed raw meaty bones. And dogs fed raw meaty bones actually produce smaller quantities of poop. Bones are also amazing for your dog's emotional health and their immune system. So ripping and tearing at something is actually super emotionally satisfying for a dog. A dog loves to eat this way as a result of thousands of years of evolution as both a hunter and a scavenger. And contrary to popular belief, bone-eating dogs actually tend to be less aggressive as they take most of their aggression out on the bones that they're eating. So this tends to lead to less destructive behavior in your house, on other dogs, on you, in general. And my boys are always exhausted after a session of eating raw meaty bones. It's a win-win for everyone. But let's go back to that point that I made earlier about bones helping to decrease the quantity of your dog's poop as well as the smell. So when people first start feeding raw meaty bones, if they've fed their dog's commercial kibble all its life, the passage of poop form that you see can actually be cause for alarm because you think that your dog is constipated because there's normal straining to pass a nice solid poop. But don't worry, it's completely normal. And if you're the one that has to pick up poop at your house, if your dog eats lots of raw meaty bones, your job just became a whole lot easier. So I call them the logs. So the logs that are passed by your dog that's eating raw meaty bones are nice and formed, they're firm, and there's a lot less of it. And we all know the poop that's passed by dogs that eat commercial kibble, right? It's mushy, it's stinky, it's usually wet, and it's super hard to pick up. Feeding your dogs raw meaty bones will definitely help that. So a question I get asked a lot then is, what sorts of bones should I feed my dog? Number one is make sure that they are raw. Again, never, ever, ever give your dog cooked bones. They're very dangerous. You can also feed your dog what's called dinosaur bones. So these are the big bones that tend to be in the hind and front legs of cattle. They're hard, they're very tough, and they're recommended mostly for exercise because all but the very largest of breeds tend to be able to break them enough to digest them, to eat them and digest them, and therefore get all the nutrients contained in them. But you can ask your butcher to cut these up for you, and also a good idea is to have them cut them lengthwise so that your dog has access to the nutritional marrow that's on the inside. But because they are so hard, it's recommended that large to giant breed dogs with very good teeth mostly eat these because they can sometimes cause teeth to break and wear down faster. The second type of bone that you should be feeding to your dog is meaty bones that are kind of what's called offcuts from your butcher. So these tend to be things like beef ribs, chop bones, neck, backbones, pelvis, etc. And you can always sort this out with your butcher and have them cut them into the sizes that you want for your dog. You can also have them take off some of the fat if they tend to be fattier, so that they're getting more meat if your dog is prone to obesity. Another great bone to start with, if your dog doesn't have an allergy to it like mine do, is chicken bones. And this is where I would recommend you start, as long, like I said, as long as your dog does not have some sort of allergy or medical condition that is triggered by chicken. A great place to start with this is chicken wings, but again, they have to be raw. Do not cook them. And a common argument here is that raw chicken contains bacteria, including Salmonella and Campylobacter jejuni. This is not an issue for healthy dogs, though. It's an issue for you as the handler, so make sure that you're just using common sense and cleaning your surfaces, utensils, and your hands with hot soapy water every time that you're preparing meals that contain raw chicken. So what sorts of bones should I not feed my dog? So obviously, number one, always always is going to be cooked bones. Never, ever feed your dog cooked bones. And you should also avoid bones from older animals. They tend to be much harder than bones from younger animals, which again can wear your dog's teeth down faster and even break them if they're too hard or the dog is too small. And old bones can also potentially store toxins. So for example, an old cow who's been pastured next to a highway all its life, the fumes and everything else coming off of that highway from the automobiles can actually get into the animal's bones and they'll store the toxins there. So it's always best to avoid bones from older animals or animals you're not sure of the age than it is to give them to them. But commercial processed dog food also contains bone and bone meal that has a strong possibility of containing these toxins as well, and you would never know it. So what about bone meal? So bone meal is simply ground up and cooked bone. So it's not recommended because it's cooked and it's ground up. So all the nutrients that we talked about previously that come from raw meaty bones, you've essentially cooked out. So while you don't have the physical dangers of cooked bones like choking and punctures, your dog is not getting any of the essential nutrients that they are by eating a raw bone. So how many bones should I feed my dog and how often should I be feeding them? Raw meaty bone should actually be fed to your dog daily, at the very least 3 times a week. Any less than that and the benefits that your dog gets from eating them actually start to disappear. And the emphasis again is on raw meaty bones. Please don't feed just bones without the meat or vice versa, the meat without the bone. And it's best practice to feed raw meaty bones when your dog is actually hungry or they've eaten a little bit of their meal, but not when they finished it. And how do you ensure that your dog's meal is actually balanced when you're feeding raw meaty bones? Always balance your dog's raw meaty bones with items listed from the top of the video, and I'll put them on the screen again here just as a reminder. And you can also get this list emailed right to you, so you always have it on hand by signing up in the description below. So there you have it, the history and science behind why raw meaty bones are nature's perfect dog food. What's your opinion of feeding this way? Let me know in the comments. Thanks so much for watching. If you got any value out of this video, please give it a thumbs up, hit that subscribe button, and hit the bell icon so you're always notified when I upload another video. I upload videos every week, so you don't want to miss out. And remember, dogs are the best.